My name is Joan Cannaday, and I am the Business Development Director for WBB. My responsibility is going out and capturing new and exciting business across DHS and all the components. We're very happy that all of you have shown up from our small business community. I know some of you, and there's a lot of people I don't know, and I look forward to knowing a lot more. So thank you again for sticking around. I think this will be an interesting panel. I'm sure we have a lot of questions to ask them. We posted some questions and said, you know, what would you ask this panel if you had the chance to? And I got a list of about 10 of which I wanted to go through and see how many we can get into today. Again, on our panel is Mr. Frank Barros, who thank you so much for your previous discussion that was very stimulating. Ms. Sharon Phillips, thank you for coming. She is our small business advocate for the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or the SBIR. Could you please pronounce that for me? SBIR. Okay, SBIR. And then Dr. Praveen Chawla, who is the founder and CEO of Edaptive Computing Incorporated. ECI is also our protege in our DoD Mentor-Protégé program. So thank you so much for coming as well. In addition, we have Mr. Bob Lohfeld, who's also a founder and CEO of Sev1Tech. Sev1Tech is a prime on the TABS vehicle, and they are a prime on TABS, Domain 1, Track 2, Small Business. And we're very fortunate to be a part of that team. So thank you, Bob. Thank you. And also joining us today to represent the large business perspective, we've asked our Chief Operating Officer, Robert Olsen, to join us. So thank you, Robert. All right, so really, there are no rules except two. You have to share the microphone, so no hogging. And the second one is that we just want to have an interactive session. I'm here to just throw a few questions out, but the most important thing is, you know, take the microphone and help these individuals out here better understand what we're trying to accomplish with the small businesses. But I am going to get it started, and I have the exact opposite issue with you on the eyeglasses. I have to have mine on to read, and I have to have them off in order to see you guys. All right, so just to get us started, and I think I'll ask Dr. Chawla to get us started on this question to begin with. Maybe we can shut that door. So the first question is, what do you think are some of the most critical challenges faced by small businesses that want to grow their capabilities and conduct business with DHS?
Well, that's an interesting question because we don't have any business with DHS, but we would like to grow that business. So actually, it's appropriate too because I think it's, you know, I guess one of the important, it has been a learning event today. We learned a lot about DHS priorities, where the focus areas, how to do business with DHS. All those are important. But partnering with a large business is, in my mind, a very important component of all this. And I guess partnering with any large business is not going to work. So the key would be to identify where the synergies are, who are the large companies that actually have complementary capabilities where it truly makes a business sense to work together. Because unless it makes business sense, these relationships never work out. And as Robert pointed out earlier today, it's all about revenue. So unless that partnership is generating revenue, it's not going to work. So I think that's probably a good way to get into DHS. But I would let my esteemed colleagues here talk more about that.
Bob, you want to take a shot at that at Sev1Tech? You guys have been through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, challenges are kind of three areas, actually four. Identity of the company, component knowledge, having a long view, and understanding and being humble getting into the market. DHS is not an easy place to be, right? You have to understand the security process, number one, right? I was at one thing and someone said, can we put people in that are non-cleared on contracts and bid them because your security process is so hard? The answer is no, right? Understanding the client and the component and the scope of the market is extremely important. You don't go after DHS As a small, you go after a component, and you spend your life for 12 to 18 months figuring out what makes that component tick, right? From a long view perspective, you have to be able to understand that DHS requires a significant investment. We're a TABS Domain 1 Track 2 holder. 3 years ago, we spent close to $500,000 on that bid between consulting and internal. That's an insane amount of investment for a small business. But if you want to play, right, you're going to win, you have to invest. If you want short-term revenue, it's not the place to go. Getting into CBP takes a year. ICE, 9 to 12 months, even with the best product or service. There's some that are quicker than others, right? Coast Guard, DOD clearances, right? You can move into those. But you got to be really smart about what you're doing and know that it's not a 90-day pop and win. The other thing to me is that identity. I get a lot of small businesses that come to me and say, hi, we have business over at X agency that's not DHS, and we're a set-aside. We want to work at DHS. That's not enough, right? You have to be relevant to the market. Being a set-aside or a small does not win business at DHS. What Mike said earlier was really critical in that you have to not only know the mission, you have to know how you can fit in and improve it. There are companies out there that have a very strong identity in an area. I'll pick on Sung because he's a friend of mine. He's been here, I've known him for years. Right? Ashburn Consulting is networking. Right? They have a ton of CCIEs. They're phenomenal. Right? They're also an 8A. Right? But the 8A comes around and talking to Sun 2 hours later. Right? They're passionate about networking. Same thing, you really have to know what your identity is when you're engaging, or you just won't get in, because the clients won't give you the attention, the program managers won't give you attention. You really have to be relevant for a reason, not because we're a small business. The other thing is, don't be too proud to sub. You know, they talked about it earlier, and subbing, there's some other questions here that'll be interesting about the dangers of subbing. But in general, to get into DHS, you got to scrap and take what you can get, right? We didn't start as a prime contractor in 6 components. We started with a small subcontract. We just did phenomenal work, right? But don't be too proud for the 1-2 FTE slot on a team that's actually going to win, because an hour worth of promises and a bunch of proposal promises aren't going to get you there. It's about getting on the right team, winning, take what you can get, and build from there. So those are the challenges to me. It's not an easy place to do work, but it is one of the most phenomenal missions I've ever supported, both as a Fed at CBP and as a consultant and a consultancy supporting DHS. It's really about the mission. And you got to wake up every morning and say, I am committed to investing just a little bit more than everyone else. And I'm committed to making sure everyone on my team is innovating, or you'll very quickly become irrelevant. So phenomenal place to be, but you got to work hard to get in. Excellent point.
And Ms. Phillips, would you like to help us understand, based on these challenges, what you also see as to maybe some that are the socioeconomic disadvantaged, eco-disadvantaged companies as well, hub zones. We have some hub zones here today who probably have those challenges and even a lot more. What do you think are some of the ways that DHS can assist these small businesses to overcome some of these challenges?
Well, and a very excellent points you make. A lot of times when I talk to some of these small businesses, I realize they don't necessarily understand the environment in which they're competing. Mm-hmm. If you're used to competing on commercial contracts, it's a differently total ball game when you're doing government contracts. I used to be a contracting officer, and I just never understood why we ask for the amount of information we do. So I don't disbelieve you that you spent that much money getting yourself ready to bid for TABS, because we want to make sure that the business, whether it's a small or large business, is successful. Mm-hmm. And we have, the vetting process is tremendous, especially for the mission we're trying to accomplish. So for small businesses, I'd like to recommend understanding the environment in which you're competing. Understand what it is when the contracting officer announces, oh, I'm going to use a pre-existing contract vehicle, such as a GSA schedule or one of our strategically sourced department-wide IDIQ contract, and versus open market procurement. because you have to know where to go to find the requirement. If it's off a pre-existing contract vehicle and you don't have one of those prime contracts, then you have to look to sub or team with one of the prime contract holders. So you're going to position yourself differently depending on how we're going to go out to meet the requirement. And then if we're going to do something off GSA schedule and you don't have a GSA schedule contract, you might make a decision not to bid because then you don't have access there. Or, like we mentioned before, subcontracting or teaming would be good. Understand when Mike had mentioned earlier that a lot of times contracting officers are trying to do market research. They issue sources sought announcements, requests for information. I've heard a lot of times going to conferences, small businesses tell me, oh, I didn't have time to respond. Yes, you do have time to respond. This is our way of doing market research. This is our way of trying to find out, are there sufficiently viable small businesses, whether they be hub zone, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, women-owned small business, hub zone small business. We want to know who is out there so we can make our decision whether to set it aside or not. So it's of utmost importance to respond to our requests for information and sources sought announcement. So this helps us help you when we are able to do adequate market research, because you have responded and said to us, yes, we can do this. And don't just send a blanket capability statement. Please read the RFI and the sources sought announcement and respond to the specific questions that we're seeking. And if all else fails, each department, including Homeland Security, has an OSDBU office, or I call it a small program office. We're there to help you. So call us and we'll reach out to the program office and the contracting group to say, yes, we know that there are businesses out there that in the women-owned field or in the hub zone area, so go ahead and set it aside.
Yeah, and I think it's important just having you show up today shows how energized you are to make sure that the small businesses are really trying to know everything you need to know to do business within DHS. So again, thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
Another question that we have is, and I'll shoot it back over to you, Mr. Lohfeld. What are some of the most important qualities that small businesses hold dear when forming partnerships with large businesses?
Great question. So I don't think there's anyone here in this room that's been around the Beltway for at least 5 years or more that hasn't been burned on a team, right? Either you sign up for something and you get nothing in the end, you've got some technology that someone took and rewrote, or you just plumb didn't get what they committed. Number one thing for us, right, for both as a sub or a prime is shared values, right? Work with companies that share your same ethos. There is a market for the lowest, cheapest place in this market. There is a market for the high end. There's also a market for people in the middle that do really good work. Figure out who you want to be as a company and partner with those people. And if you do partner, especially with a large sub or prime, partner with someone that has P&L responsibility. Partnering with a salesperson is a kiss of death. Because as soon as it goes through and it transitions at a large from the sales organization to the operational organization, which is still modeling a lot, right, you're left high and dry. As personal strategy, we've partnered most with what I call mid-sized larges, like WBB. We're at Coast Guard and ICE together. Same shared values, dedicated staff, really focused on looking at the mission. But really what it's about for me is you can pick up the phone. In my case, I get to call this lady over here. And any issue we have, we work out within about 10 minutes, whether I'm in Mexico or she's in Canada or wherever the cruise ship is, right? But in all seriousness, it's really, that's what you look for, number one, is that level. The second thing you look for is the value, right? Figure out who you want to be as a company. Because if you don't know the answer to that question, it's going to be hard to form partnerships. Back to my example of I'm just X company and I want to do business at DHS. Fantastic. So do 35,000 other companies, right? how do you really add value? We also have something called a one-hit wonder principle. The people we partner with, if we can't see more than one deal, we don't do it. The cost to start a new partnership is high, don't kid yourself, right? Especially if you're going to write props together, if your contracting officers are going to work together. It's really kind of critical that you think through what you really want out of that partner and you share those same values.
Thank you. And Dr. Chawla, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I think I would like to echo some of the same sentiments. Obviously, trustworthiness is important in a relationship, any relationship. So when you're teaming with a large business, that trustworthiness is important. And I think you have to be in for the long haul. So it takes time to develop that relationship. It's not something that develops instantaneously. Mm-hmm. So you have to make that investment of time and energy to build that relationship. But most importantly, it has to be a win-win-win, meaning the large business win, the small business win, and most importantly, the customer wins because of that partnership. Because if the customer doesn't win, then that partnership is not going to work out. So there has to be demand for the joint capabilities that the large and the small bring to the table. So it's all about supply and demand, and if you can meet that demand with that partnership, with a trustworthy partner, whether small or large, mm-hmm. It usually works out. And again, as you pointed out, it requires investment of time and energy. It takes time to develop that relationship. It's not something that comes overnight. Right. Robert probably would be able to say more about that.
I was just going to say, Robert, from a large business point of view, how do you see that?
Yeah, I'll start at the end and work back. I'll go back to, the best business development is a good quality product to the customer. If you're not developing a good quality product to the customer, you're not going to get back in, and you're not going to get back in with anybody that ever talks to that customer. It's hard enough to get in, but you have to make sure you know what you're delivering, and you have to do it with somebody that has the same passion that you do, and it goes back to the ethos that Bob said. So with that said, starting at the beginning of the dance in this room, as I call it, the great dance of who are you going to team with and who do you want to work with, is being upfront with each other on truly what your capabilities are. We all have restrictions on overhead. I'll go to the P&L side of it. We're all worried about overhead. We're all worried about where we're spending our time. How much time do we invest in something? If you're not upfront on the true capabilities of your company or the true past performance of your company, whether small, mid, or large, you're wasting the other person's time at that table. You have to be upfront on what your capabilities are. You have to be upfront on what your past performance is. And you also then have to be upfront about the potential opportunities that are downstream. I really think that it takes people that understand capabilities and where they augment each other, because we're all going to be teammates and we're all going to be competitors, at least in the government services market, in the professional services market. I can't speak too much to the construction area and other domains, but in professional services, we'll be competing against you one day and we'll be your teammate the next. But we have to have that mix of capabilities. We also have to understand and build that relationship that we can trust you and build and understand the amount of overhead we're going to have to invest in stuff. Are you strong in proposals? Or are you weak in proposals? That's not good or bad. It's a fact. Do you want to grow in that domain? Praveen and I have worked together for 6 years, I guess, and as we've developed our relationship, we know where our strengths and weaknesses of our companies are, and we've now augmented that to make sure that we can both move in the right direction. The third thing is not looking for that one-hit win. It's looking for, are there 3 to 4 to 5 opportunities out there that we can invest in that are real opportunities? It goes back to that time invested. You don't want to invest in an opportunity it's a very low P win, or we don't have confidence, no offense to our government members here, that it's actually going to come out. Or if it's going to come out, it's not going to get canceled after 360 days being on the street. That we have that option to look at 3 or 4 opportunities, that you can test that relationship with those opportunities. And once you get those opportunities into wins, great, you move on with that relationship. If you don't get those wins, then I think you owe it to you and your small business partner or you and your large partner to sit down and say, okay, why didn't we win? Do we need to continue this, or do we need to take a break for a while until we see the next set of opportunities? So it's picking your time and using that overhead that is so dear to the bottom line where it needs to be, where you get a highest probability of win. Because as Praveen said, it is about revenue, but that revenue in the government market tends to be 18 to 24 months out. To get that revenue in the door. Even after we win contracts in DHS, it's taken us, I think on average right now, 52 to 120 days to get personnel cleared to start work. So even after you win the contract, that's kind of the start line to start executing. So
Well, thank you, Robert. Mr. Barros, now hearing it from both sides, the small and the large, what are your ideas on what makes it work?
I want to ask for clarification here first from both of you. All right. One of the problems that I find with small businesses is that in the time that you were dancing together before you got married, all right, how do you keep the team together? Because that is the crux of your capability statement. So how do you keep them together? And if you keep them together because you have multiple contracts, you got multiple technologies that you're working on, is that a plus or a minus from your point of view when you come in to partner with a big company because they see that you are completely diffused, and how much of it that you can dedicate to them, so to speak?
So my strategy is P-win is by the opportunity. There we go. There we go. P-win is by the opportunity, right? You have to be able to look your partner in the eye and say, sorry, but between the both of us, we can't win. Let's go work on something else. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I can do that work. Oh, I can do that work gets you about 5% on the scale, right? There's a lot of other stuff that makes up to that. So I think that's the first part of that. As far as a partnership and how do you keep it together, there's 3 questions I always ask a prime when I'm subbing, right? And I like to see, I call it the squirm factor. If they can get through my 3 questions and like keep themselves composed, I usually will partner with them. It's number 1, have they executed a termination for convenience? Number 2, have they ever not honored work share on anything they awarded? And number 3, have they ever gone back with a set of rates post-award and tried to stick it to a sub, right? People will react very differently to those questions. And if you see the squirm factor, run, right? But keeping the team together is easier than you think, right? Because, for example, you may have a collection of partners. It's maybe only 2 partners that work in a specific area, right? And if the opportunity we're going after is in that specific area, why wouldn't I want to work with someone that I trust, that I've shared past performance? And putting on my old GS15 hat as an acquisition evaluator, right? If the partnerships already work together and they have exceptional past performance and are scoring all 5 somewhere else, I don't have the hello, we all got together for this deal, let's try and experiment on the government's nickel teaming strategy, right? So it's easy to go back to them. I don't ever see it as a disadvantage, but the way we manage the business and our partnership relationships is we can honestly look at each other in the eye and say, it just plumb doesn't make sense, right? We just, either we don't know anything about that client or together, this is a stretch, right? Like there's like taking your past performance and making it work for the solicitation. And then there's like, wow, could we do this with it, right? Mm-hmm. If the minute you break out of that comfort zone and we actually can do that, usually you need another partner. And it's not personal. On some things, I'll give you an example on WBU. I mean, we have a wonderful relationship. On some stuff, it makes absolutely sense for us to partner. On others, it doesn't, because either we're not positioned as a prime or they're not positioned as a prime. But on the stuff that we can work together, absolutely, they're the first call. You know, like for example, we have nothing at TSA. I'm not the guy to call for TSA, right? You want to do the other components, especially the law enforcement ones, we know that work inside out. So something comes out on TSA, I'm maybe not the first horse. Doesn't mean I can't do the work, but strategically, investment, P&L, I'm looking at my 5 other components. So that's the way we kind of manage it, at least as a small business prime.
Praveen, on the DoD side, what have you found?
Praveen or me?
Praveen.
What's the question again?
Ms. Barros' question, how do you keep these partnerships together? I know you do a lot of business on the DoD side, for example, with WBB. What do you see as what keeps that glue together?
Right. So in our case, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. We have very complementary capabilities. We are primarily a software development company, and we develop software for analysis and optimization of a variety of things. And WBB has subject matter expertise in a variety of things, especially acquisition. And so we saw a happy marriage there where we can bring the software and the expertise together to offer better value to our customers. And that sauce has worked really well. So for example, our Mentor-Protégé program, you know, the Air Force is expecting an ROI of 4 over 4 years. And we are in the second year now, and our ROI is already 13. So we are wildly exceeding their expectations. And it's, so as they say, proof is in the pudding. And I think the reason why that's happening is because that expertise combined with the software is able to deliver value to our customers. So I think that's really the secret.
Excellent.
Sauce. All right, Sharon.
Just real quick, I'm going to attack it from a different, Mr. Barros, when you talked about it, I didn't know whether it was from an individual personnel standpoint or a company relationship. So since we talked about company relationship, I'll go to the personnel side. The personnel side is difficult. I mean, I think right now our average, after we submit a proposal to the time that we hear of an award or a dropped or a canceled or a lost is right about 261 days. And then you add to that another 60 to 90 days to get somebody cleared, you're well over a year. So in our relationships that we build, looking for somebody that has the same ethos that we do. For instance, looking at the personnel that we already have in the company and taking care of our own personnel on, okay, we have the past performance this domain, we know how to do it. Can we 100% staff? Yeah, we can go out and get the contingent hires and bring people in, but the core people that we want to work on the program between us and our teammates, we want from internal, to do our best to move those people internal, to give our own personnel upward mobility in the company to see what they have to invest, and also to give our subs and our teammates the ability to do that. So, but that's not easy. It's difficult to keep people on a tether and find billable work for them. It goes to profit and loss. I mean, when we really get down to it, how long can you carry an individual, as I call it? Can you carry him a month? Can you carry him 2 months? How does that affect your P&L? You definitely can't carry him a year and a half to any great extent for a large team because you're going to hurt from a profit and loss. You'll never recover from that. So it's a blend of that, of working with your teammates, understanding who are the critical hires, can you get them engaged elsewhere, can you make sure that they're going to be available downstream when you're actually ready to execute the contract. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you win it, you're a year and a half later, and you don't have the team that you're ready to provide. You got to make sure you have that leadership team that's going to be there helping that customer, the thought leadership.
That's a big thing that, can everybody hear me? No. That's a big thing that in the SBIR program, Congress was very, very aware of the tremendous distances between initiation of the award, when the contract is signed, or when the evaluation process is completed, when the contract is signed. The big gap, there are huge gaps in there. So when they did the reauthorization, they put down very definitive time limits for 9 of the 11 agencies. The 2 agencies that are allowed to take a full 12 months to evaluate your phase 1 proposal is NIH and NSF. All the other agencies are supposed to have a decision made within 90 days of when the competition closes. But that's not the big issue from the personnel point of view for many of our small companies. It is the gap between the end of phase 1, the time you put in the phase 2 proposal, and the time you get the contract awarded. So the only way we've been able to handle that is, since you are no longer, phase 2 is no longer an invitation-only submission. In the past, you could only submit a phase 2 if we invited you to submit a phase 2. Now anybody can submit a phase 2 who has gotten a phase 1. That means that your preparation on it, you will know, in my opinion, in my experience, that within 2 months of you doing your work on that phase 1, you're going to have an inkling as to whether or not you're going to accomplish something or not. So to narrow that and handle the personnel problem, you kind of encourage that phase 2 so that you're almost dropping that proposal in the day the phase 1 closes. But that is a very serious issue for the smaller SBIR companies. It's how to keep their technical team together, the personnel point of view. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you. For our next question, Ms. Phillips, if you'll take this one, let's get it started. Mm-hmm. What mechanisms are out there for small businesses to collaborate with DHS to put together a winning team, such as maybe the vendor outreach sessions that you guys do?
Yeah. So we have several mechanisms. As you mentioned, our vendor outreach sessions, which we put on a monthly basis. And some of our monthly vendor outreach sessions are targeted to a specific group of people, small businesses. Let's say for March, it will be set just for women-owned small businesses. In November, it's for veteran-owned companies. So we try to set aside a month where we're meeting with a specific group of people. At these vendor outreach sessions, we have our small business specialists from each of our components present for a 15-minute appointment where you can sit, talk, showcase your capabilities. And also we might have 4 or 5 of our large business prime there as well. Then I'd like to talk too a little bit about our Mentor-Protégé program. Excellent. That allows a large business mentor to provide developmental assistance to our small business protege. The large business does not have to have a current DHS contract. We're the facilitator to allow this mechanism to work. It's a 3-year agreement, and what it is, it allows the relationship to start. Most times it's a pre-existing relationship because we try to encourage that large business mentor or the small business protege. Don't call a company cold and say, hey, can you mentor me? Or, hey, do you want to be my protege? There's no vested interest in doing that. And sometimes when I first came to DHS and I managed the Mentor-Protégé program, I found a lot of companies got together, did this Mentor-Protégé agreement because of Eagle 1 was out and they wanted to get extra credit. When they were being evaluated, they didn't win a contract and the agreement went by the wayside. So try and find a company that you've done business with before or partner with, or you just have some kind of relationship and they have an interest in seeing you succeed. Come up, sit down. We could be present with you two, or you just sit down with each other and come up with some sound developmental assistance to help each other along. What I've found with the successful mentor-protege teams is that when the large business does get a contract at DHS, if they don't have one, they'll bring that protege on as a sub or a teammate. And also, I've seen the reverse, where that small business protege wins a prime contract, and they'll have their large mentor along to help them. So that's just 2 mechanisms. And then also remember that someone mentioned earlier that DHS is huge. It really is. Do not try to market to DHS. Do not say, oh, I want to get into DHS. We have 8 major buying activities. Do research and see which one of these components, we call these buying activities components, see who's most likely to buy what it is you have to offer, and then market to them. Each of these buying activity has 1 or 2 small business specialists working within their operational group. They have intimate knowledge about what they buy on a day-to-day basis, and they're your liaison. They're there to help you. They can give you status of what it is you're inquiring about. Are they going to be, the strategy which they're going to use, is it going to be off GSA schedule, maybe a department-wide contract or open market? Is it going to be set aside? Or maybe the decision hasn't been made yet, but you can help us make a decision to set it aside for your group, whether it's a hub zone or women-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned. So reach out to our small business specialists within our component, but first do some market research. Do some research and see what it is that the mission is for that component and what it is they're buying on a day-to-day basis, or what's coming down the pipeline.
Thank you. That is so important, and I highly recommend you guys look at the website, look at when the next vendor outreach session is going to be. It's like speed dating a little bit, but it's so productive. You get a lot of information, at one setting. So if you can, try and make one of those events. And there's a process that you go through, and it's spelled out on their website.
Yep.
And the Mentor-Protégé, we can't say enough about that. I think it's probably the best way for small businesses to really get involved in partnering and finding that relationship that works and working together and winning business together. So thank you. But on that note, somebody said to me, Joan, the one thing, yes, I understand this is the process of how to get to work for DHS, but we're having a hard time actually just starting the communication channel. We want to be able to get in and say, what is our value proposition? What makes us different? But what do? Do we have somebody on the phone calling 24/7 until somebody just, you break them down and they finally accept your meeting proposal? Or is it through responding to RFIs? What do you think the best way to get the communication started between small businesses and with the government in DHS?
Actually, it's several different ways. So I think, especially because I work in the small business office, I think there's the resources there to help small businesses. Okay. Because not only I have maybe 8, 9 other colleagues in my office, and they pretty much do the same thing I do. We're there to help the small businesses. But we have small business specialists in each of our buying activities, and they're there too. So attending our vendor outreach sessions, which I mentioned before, calling, emailing us. I wouldn't recommend trying to reach the program folks because they're really very busy, and they're going to be apprehensive to call back, especially if it's something that they're working on. They might be hesitant to give you an unfair advantage. I don't have that issue. I'll find the information out and give it to you in terms of this strategy that they anticipate using in procuring the goods or services. So there are different mechanisms. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you keep calling that one person, because after a while they're gonna like, okay, that name is familiar, and
don't pick up.
But find out what is unique about your company. DHS have a very complex mission to accomplish. And if we were experts, we wouldn't be letting contracts, we would do it ourselves. Tell us how you can help us solve the problem, and use unique ways of reaching us by phone or email. Just ask for a 15-minute appointment with a small business specialist or my counterparts, myself or my counterparts, and then we can start the ball rolling, just because we now know what it is you do, and we can put a face to the name. Right. That have, of the people who have been leaving the messages. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Bob, what's been successful for you?
Yeah, so from an industry perspective, there's the forums, right? So you want to get close to program people, right? Like try calling the Secret Service and call program manager. If you get a call back, let me know, because you should play lotto that day, right? But in all seriousness, AFCEA, NDIA, ACIAC. I love the component industry days, right? That's a great opportunity. People there are usually pretty open, and we'll chat. The other thing comes back to investment. I mean, let's face it, guys, right? Everyone has relationships and networks, and they're not all across DHS, right? At some point, I want to do work at TSA. I'm going to have to buy that, right? I'm either going to have to buy a consultant that can get me in and in front of people so I can really understand what's going on, or I'm going to have to hire somebody and suck it out of overhead, right, and figure out how to make it work. That's the realism. Not everyone can be an expert across DHS. I have my 3 components, right? Some of my other VPs, they have their 2, 3 components that they know what's going on. But you're not going to get in it if they absolutely don't know you, unless you're interfacing in one of these venues, right, where it's solving a problem together, industry and government, and you get a chance to get some interaction. So that's really kind of the way I look at it. Or a partner. If you have a trusted relationship with a partner, and I say that if you have trusted relationship, right, because no one's going to put you in front of their client if they think you're going to go around them, right? But if you have that kind of partnership, I put people in front of my customers, they put me in front of theirs. Again, it comes back to the long-term view with that partnership. But ultimately, as a small business, you're going to have to invest. because just even going to some industry days, I wouldn't put anything on my revenue chart for, you know, a good 6 to 12 months, maybe even 18 months. You just sometimes have to get somebody who knows what's going on there.
Okay. Robert, did you have anything to offer? Okay. I guess one of the questions also that I get from industry or small businesses a lot is they're trying to understand the APFS, the Acquisition Procurement Forecast System, and they're saying, Joan, can you help me understand this? I see there's opportunities in there from 2010. Is this real? Is it real or is it Memorex? So we're like, no, it really is real. Some components are better than others, but can either one of you help us understand the APFS? Is it a good way to really find the opportunities of what's coming out in the next 12 to 18 months?
I will.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, that's fine. Yes, it is a good way to find opportunities. And yes, there might be stuff on there from 2010 and you're like, oops, did they procure it? Maybe someone failed to update it. But we issue our annual forecast of contract opportunities at the beginning of every fiscal year. If it's not available October 1, my boss, Kevin Boshears, will have a fit. And you can tell him I said that. So we put a lot of time and effort into it. But also, and the hard copy wouldn't necessarily show you historical information, but if you go online and search, you will find that kind of information. We want historical information to be available to you, what contracts were let and when they're getting ready to expire, because maybe you didn't get a chance to position your company to bid on a requirement that you could have bid on. Because maybe you were doing something else and you just made a no-bid decision, a decision not to bid. But you want to know when is it going to expire again so you can position yourself for the recompete. So yes, you'll see information there that you might ask yourself, is it outdated or not? Some is, but some things might not be updated, but it was a viable requirement. Yeah. And that is available online. I recommend searching online because you can search by component. If you're interested in TSA, you can see what TSA has out there that's in your industry. You can search by the NAICS code or certain key description. And you can, so that it allows you to weed out everything else that doesn't pertain to you. And one recommendation, usually the point of contact in our forecast system is a program person. They're not going to call you back. Please reach out to the small business specialist at that component. Or reach out to my office. And our website has all of our names, my name and all my colleagues' name and contact information, as well as the small business specialist working in each of the components. And we're better able to assist you on that requirement.
That's excellent.
You know, I have to put my glasses on and read it from. I literally go in Google or Bing and type DHS Open for Business, and it takes you there. Yes. But I'm going to do the right thing, and I will read it off for you. It is www.dhs.gov/open for business, all one word. But if you go to a search engine and just type in DHS Open for Business, it will take you there. Right. And it links you to small business assistance, and it has a host of information on our vendor outreach session, Mentor-Protégé program, our forecast system, upcoming conferences, and all the contact information.
Thank you so much. And final question, and just to summarize, and I'd like for each of you to take a minute to answer, if you would, please. If you were to name 1 to 3 top areas to focus on in order to effectively support DHS and its components, what would you list? Mr. Barros, would you like to start us off?
I would put the burden right on you from the research and innovation point of view to make sure you understand what it is on the operating levels, on the operating level, not way up here on it, but on the operating levels, what the components say their technology gaps are. One way to find that out if you're having a lot of trouble is that in S&T there is a link, not on the website, I mean a physical human link between each component and someone in S&T. And the way that works is that someone from S&T is normally assigned to a component for a 1 to 2 year period and then comes back to S&T, kind of rotates like that. That person can really get you into whoever you're trying to reach at the component level, provided they are comfortable with what you are trying to do. And I have always said to the small companies when I talk to them, I am perfectly willing to be your conduit to that person at S&T. And I am also perfectly willing to be your conduit 3 weeks later when you haven't gotten a call back to make sure that you at least get a call back. And perhaps even to the point that if you are in town, to set up a meeting with the S&T side, and then together you set whatever happens 45 minutes later after the end of that meeting. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So I think I turned it off. So areas to focus on in terms of helping us accomplish our mission would be understanding our mission. Sometimes it's kind of hard for us to understand it too. But there's an overall arching DHS mission, which is complex. But then at the component level too, they have their own mission that ties back into our overall mission as well. So I think that's an area to focus on. Understanding our mission, and then understand that DHS buys goods and services in a wide range of industry. And we use just about all the different methods that you can think of. And we have talked about that. Mike has mentioned that as well in his presentation. So those are 2 areas.
Yeah, thank you.
The good news is that there's nothing that anyone here actually does that DHS isn't going to buy next month, if not in the next 60 days. For me, the focus area isn't really the service or the technology. It's more the process and thought of you as a small business. For me, there's 4 things that build on. You're spot on. Knowledge, right? If you're going to go market to an area in CBP and you don't understand what air transportation, import-export is on the cargo side, or what passenger border crossings mean, or the history of SBI net, right? You're going to have a pretty short conversation with whoever you're talking to. So domain knowledge, same thing with Coast Guard, right? You can't go in and talk about cutters unless you know the history of the ship program. So you got to stay relevant and read the articles that are out there, what's happening in each component. Mm-hmm. That builds on delivery. At DHS, you need to deliver every day and be committed to that. Regardless of P&L, regardless of what you want to do the next 30 days, if you don't deliver for this client, you will end a short life. The mission is too important for mediocrity. That builds on reputation and identity, right? You can be small and mighty, right? That's okay, but it's the mighty part that you want to be as a company. So build that reputation, and then that gets you the relationships. If you do good work for one component, it does translate to the other like components. Right? I mean, there's some that are disparate, right? Doing work for ICE and doing work for S&T, some of that overlaps. A lot of it doesn't. Doing work for some of the CBP IT and some of the ICE IT, they share a lot of the same systems, right? There's a lot of overlap there. So you just kind of got to be smart. But you can build those relationships by doing those 3 things. Staying relevant in the market, staying relevant as a company, building that reputation, and then the relationships will come.
Thank you.
So we at Edaptive are still learning how to do business with DHS. So the event today was very useful and very insightful in terms of learning how to do that. But one thing I've learned so far is that best way to do business with DHS, if you don't have any business with DHS, is to partner with the prime. And I guess when you're partnering with a prime, all those things that have been said so far apply. It has to deliver value to the prime and to the customer. So finding a prime that has synergistic capabilities and therefore jointly you can deliver value to the customer is probably the best way to get in. At least that's the way I've understood it, but I'll probably leave it at that.
Robert, I think we are running out of time, and I know you're doing closing remarks. If you would like to combine
Transition,
those.
so you're cutting me off. You're giving me the hook.
Diane's coming up behind me, so.
Just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. So, thank you, Joan, very much. Good job moderating. Would very much like to thank our panelists for agreeing to participate in this panel and all of the no-notice questions that we threw at you. Robert is going to make a few closing remarks. If you have not yet, put your business card in the fishbowl. Jim Arabia has that over there as well. And as soon as Robert's done with his wrap-up, we'll do the raffle, and then we invite you to continue networking, or certainly if you want to go upstairs and buy Diana a drink at the bar, that's awesome too. So.
All right, first I'd like to thank all the panel members again. Appreciate your time coming out. And everybody that remains, I appreciate you coming. As everything we talked about, it's about relationships. I called it a dance because it's either a dance or a game. If it really is a big game and a big dance, but the game has consequences. We all employ people. We all want to keep them employed. We all want to deliver a high-quality product, and we all have a passion for what we do. That's why we're in this business. We're passionate about supporting, whether it's the warfighters, whether it's Coast Guard, whether it's Secret Service, whoever it may be, we have a passion to provide them the highest quality support we can. And the way you do that is you build the best team you can absolutely build and present it to the government. So we need to do that, and this is the start of that. So please, I appreciate everybody coming. Continue communications with each other, communications with your primes, with WBB, et cetera, to put the best product you can in front of DHS. I was going to hit on that last question, even though I got the hook, is understand what the demand is. First, understand what your core competencies are and what your discriminators are in the market. You need to be honest with yourself on what those are. If you try to fool yourself or you start stretching it, you're going to spend overhead dollars and beat your head against a wall, and it's not going to work. You may win a golden nugget every now and then, but to win consistently, you have to be honest with yourself on what your capabilities are. Also, understand what the demand is. Be prepared when you go see the government individual. Be prepared when you go see a potential teammate. Whether they're small, large, or whatever, be prepared to ask them, what is the demand signal that they're looking for? What capability are they missing? And then I'll hit on it at the end. It's still about quality of service. Once you win it, you have to win, and you have to provide a great quality product. I cannot tell you how many products that we've sold to a customer, that we've delivered a high-quality product, and that customer has moved on to another agency. I'd like to think it was great marketing by WBB, that we shacked everything that Shipley trains you to do, but it really wasn't. We provided a great service to Joe when he was at Command X, and Joe moved to Command Y and said, you guys get over here. I have some problems. I need you to help me. And they find a way to get you in on a team and work it. So quality products is what you need to deliver.